and the lessons learned. The main issues learned and indeed identified by participants were as follows. The non-indigenization of the economy. If your economy is not sufficiently indigenized, in the event of any crisis, investors will flee and indeed bolt with their investment, their money. What becomes of us? Is the reason why there is a strong advocacy. Thanks, but no thanks to the COVID-19, that we must reposition Ghanaians in the affairs of the economy. So Ghanaian, hey, this is difficult too. Ghanaianing or Ghanaianization of the economy. Nigerians will say Ghanaians. And sometimes when you need to smith these words, they become a bit muffled. We must reposition Ghanaians in strategic areas in the economy. Otherwise, as the COVID has exposed us, we'll be rendered naked in the event of crisis. It also identified inadequate support for businesses created during and after the emergence of the COVID-19. And these were exercises that were done in 2020 and 2021. One of the key matters that emerged was the non-payment of taxes by some professional bodies in Ghana. That is the third observation. And low levels of internal revenue mobilization. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are bemoaning the fact that there is high public debt stock and that we need to look inwards and mobilize revenue to develop our country. Because nobody will develop this country for us than Ghanaians themselves. And this observation came from the engagement that we had with civil society organizations in the year 2020. The emphasis was, the observation was on the low levels of internal revenue mobilization and that we should increase and expand revenue mobilization in the country. It is surprising, subsequent to this, that government now steps forward to say that, look, the cost of borrowing has escalated, no thanks to COVID, and the fact also that our debt to GDP ratio has escalated, again, no thanks to COVID. So we must look inwards to mobilize resources from the country to develop, to build our roads, to build clinics, health facilities, to build educational facilities, to deliver potable water. And one of the ways to do this is by the introduction of E-levy. And people say, no, we'll not allow you to borrow outside. We'll not allow you to also raise revenue from inside this country. So where are we going? Do you want development or we don't want development? Do we want our roads to be built or not to be built? I keep saying, the cost of road construction and road maintenance has escalated over the past 20 years. Why? Because over the past 20 years, just 20 years, the road network of this country has doubled. When President Akufo-Addo took over the administration of this country, the total road network in this country was 39,000 kilometers. When President Akufo-Addo was leaving the scene, the road network had almost doubled. From 39,000, it had increased to 69,000 over 8 years. There were roads in the countryside that were not part of the national road network. Akufo, it was who brought all of them into one basket. So feeder roads was enriched, and we had huge number of kilometerage added to our feeder roads. It's how come the road network increased from 39,000 to 69,000. The NDC assumed the reins of power. They added on to that. From 69,000, it went to 73,000, an increase of 4,000 additional kilometers. Akufo-Addo's first 4 years increased from 73,000 to 78,000 kilometers. So over just 2 decades, from year 2000 to 2021, the road network has increased more than 100%. We need to maintain them. We need to service them. We need to build new roads. So from independence up to 2000, we had only 39,000. Just 20 years after, it's doubled, more than doubled, to, as we speak today, 79,000 kilometers. We need to maintain them. Where do we have the money to do the maintenance? If we don't mobilize resources from within. Today, as we speak, local contractors, road contractors, the government is indebted to them to the tune of about 4.5, 4.6 billion Ghana cedis. We're not having money to pay them. The E-levy, we are told, in fact, the road fund contributes something. That's not much. The road tolls, yielding altogether about 72 million a year. What is it going to do? In the meantime, that section of the road where you have the road tolls, often because they stop there, the road ends up being warped and furrowed. So you have ridges and furrows at that place. So every year you have to maintain those portions of the road. It's the 78 million that you collect that you are going to use. Some you are going to use to even maintain those sections of the road. How much is left? The E-levy, we are told, is going to yield about 8 billion as opposed to 78 million. What's all your coin at the end of the day? 78 million or 8 billion. That will yield enough for us to be able to do the roads. Of course, I do know that it's not everything that is going to be used for the construction of roads. But if you have 8 billion, 9 billion from the E-levy, it's going to be substantial for you to be able to engage in development programs and projects. So the dialogue sessions indicated to us that we need to do this. And you know what? They were saying that we have so many markets in the country. Those markets are not paying the relevant or the requisite levies. And they were saying that we should involve the queen mothers, the various market queens, to be able to identify the traders who will pay the requisite levies to assist in the development not only of the markets, but also the communities where the markets are situated. The participants made the following recommendations during the dialogue. The economy should be indigenized. There should be support systems for businesses created during and after the emergence of the COVID-19 pandemic. Professional bodies should be encouraged to pay taxes, and there ought to be a rigorous effort at increasing internal revenues in order to increase revenue levels and reduce the nation's dependence on loans and foreign handouts. I just said that our debt to GDP is ballooning. It's ballooning because before the COVID, we're expanding our economy in the region of our 10% on yearly basis, or of 7% on yearly basis. No thanks to COVID. You now can't even grow by 1%. You grew at 0.4%, right? And yet, expenditures were not at the level that we projected. Expenditures escalated. What does it mean? It means that whereas your nominator was increasing, your denominator was shrinking. It is the reason why your debt to GDP is ballooning. So not until you are able to increase your base the denominator, if the cost escalates and commensurately the denominator, the revenue does not improve, your debt to GDP will keep ballooning. So, distinguished colleagues, we need to appreciate this, that government must have sufficient revenue to be able to develop the nation the way we all envisage that the nation must develop. The ministry had a dialogue with other senior media professionals to examine the context within which presidential and parliamentary elections should be conducted in order to offer some strictures on how Ghana could consolidate her democracy. The working interactions achieved the following objectives. One, we examined the context within which presidential and parliamentary elections should be conducted, and it analyzed the media's stake in the conduct of free, fair, and transparent elections. We reviewed the growing challenges confronting the media in performing their democracy-enhancing roles, and we consolidated the relationship between the Ministry of Parliamentary Affairs and the media to deepen democratic governance. I've already spoken to you about what we did, economic revitalization amid COVID-19 pandemic, the media's agenda. And in that regard, the following objectives were achieved. We reaffirmed the media's stake in the rejuvenation of Ghana's economy. The media primarily should be concerned with the development, stability, and the integrity of this country. Our focus should be, you want freedom of speech, freedom of the media. What should it translate to? At the end of the day, it should relate, as I keep saying, and I keep repeating always, it should relate to the protect freedoms, unity. It is not just talking and critiquing and criticizing without any vision. The vision for all of us should be how to develop our country in unity. We are a diverse people, yes, but the diversity should yield to unity and stability of our nation. It should not be, as somebody is saying, that I'm calling for a national insurrection against the government, the soldiers, for the sustenance of the democracy that we have as a nation. So the media should be concerned, ultimately, about the rejuvenation of Ghana's economy. We interrogated the major economic policies and programs instituted by government aimed at revitalizing the economy of Ghana. We offered a platform for the harvesting of ideas towards the rejuvenation of Ghana's economy, nurtured the relationship between the ministry and the media to enhance democratic governance. The forum came with some recommendations. One was that Parliament must endeavor to support the operations of the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation, GBC. Are there any representatives of GBC here? You have representatives here. Thank you very much. You are doing very well. But you must also be transparent and accountable. We want Parliament to assist. We want Parliament to have the government to continue to resource you as the number one broadcaster for this nation. And we do appreciate what you do. But if you have situations where, in an election year, political parties are required to pay so much to advertise. We advertise in the private media, we pay. And when we advertise with GBC, radio, television, those parties must pay. And when after the elections, we want to look at the records of payment of those parties and you can't find them, that's a challenge. So you must also be transparent and accountable. If I should speak for you, I should speak to your records. If I records, nobody records anymore, then you make my work difficult. True or false? GBC, true or false? True. Say so. Let other people hear you. You don't want to talk. So that's where we are. We want transparency and accountability in our national life. That transparency and accountability should not be limited to the political players, not only to members of parliament, not to ministers, not to the Speaker of Parliament, not to the President, not only to the judiciary. All other public servants, you exist to provide service for the public, and you must be transparent and accountable. So public institutions are required to be accountable as well. The ministry engaged political parties on the theme, monetization of politics in Ghana, a focus on solutions. The program was held to identify and discuss measures that could be instituted to address the excessive monetization of our politics. The dialogue carried out an introspection of the effects of monetization on the quality of governance in Ghana. We examined the growing contribution of political parties to monetization and evaluated strategies that can be adopted to curb monetization in politics. And the ministry, by that engagement, had that collaboration with political parties to improve upon the quality of democracy. The recommendations that ensued from that session in order to curb the level of monetization of politics are as follows: that we should review the Constitution, that is the 1992 Republican Constitution, to make political parties and the electorate more responsive. 2, we must reform the political parties law in order for them to be much more open and transparent and accountable. The political parties should let us know where they are getting their monies from. They don't want to talk about that. We have all manner of people contributing, and yet the political party law proscribes any non-Ghanaian from contributing. When the law was made, 5 million. 5 million today is 50 cities, right? Or is it 500 cities? 500 cities. It's 500 cities. What it means is that nobody, no non-Ghanaian can contribute more than 500 Ghana cities to a political party. And yet we know what happens behind the curtains. If you want to be realistic, we must review the political parties law. Then we must also review the assets declaration law. Political activists, public servants are required to declare their assets every 4 years, right? When you declare your assets, you then take it to the Auditor General. What is the Auditor General supposed to do with it? He seals it, then he deposits it somewhere. Maybe when somebody enters into a litigation with you and you have a court case, the matter could be interrogated. Other than that, nobody raises an issue about that. But why is it that when you declare your assets, the Constitution provides that you should lodge it with the Auditor General? It is so because the Auditor General must look at it, audit it. So if within 4 years you have built 4 houses, the Auditor General then will call you into question. Where did you get the money from to build the 4 houses? And if you had good money, did you pay your taxes? Is the responsibility of the Auditor General. But however it came to be structured in our Constitution, the Constitution is silent on it. It just says that deposit with the Auditor General. And the Auditor General, as if he is your watchman, you just deposit it with him and he keeps it till the kingdom come. That is not supposed to be the arrangement. He is supposed to open your declared assets. The other day I heard somebody say that, as the last count, he had about 100 houses. I say, hey, and why are they? 100 houses, no. Property rate being in the established democracies, if you have a house located anywhere, you pay property rate. The property rate is calculated One, the location of the property, the provision of utilities, water, electricity, telephone services, and the prime location of that facility. And finally, the cost, the evaluated cost of that property. These 6 factors determine the rate that you pay to the council. Accra, Kumasi, Sekondi Takoradi, Tamale, these metropolitan areas, they don't require government support to stay alive. If they were diligent in raking in property rates, they will not require to rely on common fund. And the common fund should go to support distressed districts like Lambusie. Should I add Swami? I mean, we know the districts that are distressed. They should go to support them, not the endowed districts. But go to Land Valuation Board and go and look at the property, the cost of the assigned rates of the property in Accra. You'll be surprised to realize that mansions in Accra, the rate that is assigned to maybe that property will be about maybe 50,000, 100,000. So at the end of the day, the district assembly can only go and request that in that regard, pay property rate of 200 Ghana cedis on that property. Whereas if it is properly evaluated, that one property, because it's usually a percentage of the combined effect of these factors that I've alluded to. So that property perhaps should be attracting maybe about 100,000 Ghana cedis for a year because of its location, because of its value. And yet that property is assigned a rate of 400 cedis. If we did that, look, I say, oh, Sikache and Bill Gates. Why is Bill Gates not building 200 houses in America? Because of property rates. So we should do this. There should be proper assets declaration. And as for those of them engaged in the monetization of politics, there should be proper sanctions. There must be a state funding of political parties with clearly defined modalities for its implementation, strengthen the internal political parties mechanisms, the need for consistent public education on the ill effects of monetization of politics on national development, and the mandate of the Electoral Commission must be reviewed and a different institution established to be solely responsible for the regulation of political parties. The EC charged with the conduct of elections. But the regulation of political parties is something that has become difficult for the Electoral Commission. Perhaps the time has come to assign another institution with that responsibility. The law provides that if you don't exist in 2/3 of the districts in this country, you don't have to be registered as a political party. The Electoral Commission, without recourse to this provision in the Constitution, would usually give them a provisional certificate when they don't exist in 2/3 of the districts. We should be religious about that. And once we are able to do this, the multiplicity of political parties that we have in the system, I think we have more than 32 or so registered political parties in this country. And yet we know that in terms of ideology, there can only be 2 political parties. There can only be 2 political parties. You either belong to the left or you belong to the right. The directive principles of state policy, which has defined the broad goal of development for us as a nation, compels all political parties to belong to the center. So in spite of ourselves, I belong to the MPP, in spite of ourselves, we are just a liberal party, a rightist liberal party. So we belong just a little bit to the right of the center. The NDC, in spite of themselves, also belong to just a little bit to the left of the center. We are all centrist parties. And it's the reason why a liberal party like the MPP, it was, that introduced school feeding, that introduced health insurance, which otherwise should be the remit of a social democratic party, not a liberal democratic party. But it is because of the imperatives of the Constitution, which is forcing us to do this. So, ladies and gentlemen, we should do what is right for this nation. And I think if we did, we'll be growing up together as a nation in leaps and bounds. The ministry organized a day's workshop for the National Commission for Civic Education, the Electoral Commission, the Media Commission, and the Commission for Human Rights and Administrative Justice. And the theme for the program was Independent Governance Institutions and Election 2020 in Ghana, some reflections. And we discussed 4 topics. 1, securing free and responsible regulatory environment for the media processes towards 2020 elections. Strengthening the institutional capacity of the NCC to deliver voter education towards the 2020 elections. So these, we are talking about what happened in the year 2020. Revisiting the human rights dimensions of democratic elections in Ghana, lessons from the 2020 elections, towards an effective electoral management in Ghana, the 2020 elections in perspective. The program was useful as one examined the various factors impinging on the credibility of the electoral process, reviewing the capacity of the NCC for the conduct of voter education, interrogated the regulatory framework to guide the conduct of the media practitioners, discussed the human rights dimensions of democratic elections in Ghana. The ministry is positioned to support Ghana's transformation above everything else, to deepening democratic governance, to harmonizing relationship between Parliament and the Executive, supporting the capacity-building efforts of Parliament, enhancing the ability of the leader of government business to execute his or her functions, and supporting the independent governance institutions to function optimally, and encouraging the participation of civil society organizations in the formulation and implementation of public policies and programs. And we'll do this, hitherto, when government comes with their own programs, they go to Parliament. Civil society has little contribution towards. So what we do these days is to lift the programs and policies in their formative days, bring them up to engage civil society for their participation. Indeed, again, if you look at the Constitution provides for the Council of State, for instance, to advise the President on bills that go to Parliament, which the President perhaps, after its passage by Parliament, would not want to assent to, but refer to the Council of State for advice. Now, if the Council of State is not following what Parliament is doing, and it goes to them, and they are required to proffer advice to the President, what advice would they give to the President on that? They will not proffer any useful advice. So what I've done is to engage the Council of State such that any bill that comes to Parliament, we submit copies to them. And sometimes I have some discussions with them on the memorandum, that is the objects, the principles and policies behind that bill. And then they also follow Parliament, what Parliament is doing. And they're able then to know what is right, what is wrong with this bill. So that if, after its passage, it goes to the President refers it to them, having followed the deliberations in Parliament, they will have appreciated what Parliament did, and if there should be any filling in, it will be better placed to do what the Constitution requires of them. And so we're enhancing governance. And the civil society organizations, we found a way to also let them have copies of such programs. For for them to deliberate on, and then they will touch base with Parliament and also with the ministry, and then we synthesize the ideas from civil society organizations and then factor them into the formulation, indeed the crafting of the bills in Parliament. So, ladies and gentlemen, the ministry generally promotes consensus around the fundamental issues of development through the shaping of public policies in order to secure for ourselves and posterity the blessings of liberty, equality of opportunity, and prosperity as captured in the preamble of the 1992 Republican Constitution. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for indulging me.
Honorable Minister, thank you for the brilliant and insightful presentation. In fact, I had prepared a summary, but trust me, it was so beautiful that the presentation need not be touched. But for the purpose of the non-English speaking stations, I would like to give a minute summary in Twi so that you would appreciate all that the Honorable Minister said today. Mestre Minuanum Centrofo say ensema Honorable Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu onona abanyaso ehwe emrahye bedwam nkita hudie so ode abeto yanim awie no ene say enam
News.
Welcome to another insightful installment of Drive Safe, where we learn how to drive safe, what to do on our roads, what not to do on our roads, so that all of us can prevent the carnage and stay alive, basically. Now, we're going to continue from where we left off the last time. But right before we get into today's installment, though, so you think you know, how much do you